Hey guys, welcome back into the channel. So let's go over this episode 4 review of Halo the show. So let's get into it. So first off, we come to a vision where Chief and the rest of the team are being trained by Mendez. Nothing really too closely here besides Mendez himself. So anyway, moving on. So it is revealed that Chief has actually tried to run away multiple times, and Dr. Halsey questions him, why is he doing this? And Chief tells her that he wants to go home, and she's like, this is your home. And John's like, no, my real home. Like, why was I taken, among all that. So it seems even back then, Chief still has some memories of his childhood, but obviously the full wipes that, this seemingly the show is going, it has not entirely worked, but for the most part it has, obviously. Moving on. So back in the present day, Chief of Cortana noted that Chief's blood pressure, among other things, have actually spiked, and it's deduced that it's because of anxiety. And I guess what Chief is anxious about is seeing Uranus 2 again after all these years. Moving on. So we now get to see a full version of Uranus 2, what it looks like in live action, and it looks good. I like the visual effects of that asteroid belt. It looks really cool. Moving on. So Soren and Ha have arrived at Magical, as Ha wants to round up another resistance in an attempt to gain freedom. Moving on. So back on Reach, it is revealed that Kai actually, watched John closely, as we see in the previous episode, and removed her emotion suppressor as well. Moving on. So back on Uranus 2, John, drives the Warhog to the burial site and takes off his helmet after like 15 seconds, and that kind of annoyed me. Like, why have it on in the first place if you were just gonna take it off, literally seconds later? Moving on. Back to Magical. Ha and Soren run into an old friend of Ha, and it's revealed that local people are hosting a memorial for Ha's father, the general, later that night. And it is also revealed to Ha that she has a bounty on her head, so for some kind of unknown reward. Moving on. Back on Reach, it is revealed that Kai actually took the blood from her hands after removing the suppressor and essentially put it into her hair, and that's how we get the red stripes on her head, as you can see now. Moving on. So then it is revealed that Keyes wants to do tests on the rest of the Silver Team to see if, whenever Chief had touched the artifact, will have the same effect on the rest of the Silver Team as it does on him. Moving on. So back to Uranus, it is revealed seemingly the search was a bust, and it is only the images that were found in that case that was dug up at that burial site where John and his father buried it, much to John's dismay when he was a kid. Moving on. Back on Magical, it is revealed only a small number of the town/planet actually came and paid tribute to her father, and understandably, she is very upset, as she started calling everybody traitor, and then after all that, like saying, how could you, after everything he's done, do you just essentially just give up, calling them all traitors, like I said before, and then all hell breaks loose. So as people are getting hunted and killed by local forces of the planet, under the new leadership. So from what it looks like. So moving on. And it's revealed that it did not work, as I think we all kind of expected. It seems that in this universe, this interpretation of the universe, it seems that only certain reclaimers, not all reclaimers, can activate certain form of artifacts. We know John is one of them, obviously, and obviously McGee from the Covenant is the other one. But is there anyone else besides those two? We'll see what happens. So, which was obviously a big departure, where it implied that all humans can activate these artifacts or whatnot, but no. I guess in this universe that's not the case. Moving on. So back on Uranus 2, with Cortana's help, John wants to essentially recreate visual images of his childhood, essentially, to try to find clues to possibly where the second artifact is located. Anyway, next scene, it is shown that John is actually watching John, when he was a kid, draw those same papers that he had in his hand in the previous scene, which was obviously those drawings that he drew. So anyway, moving on, next up. And it is revealed in another vision where young John discovers the location, seemingly discovers some kind of hole that leads to some kind of cave, which is probably where the next artifact is. Anyway, moving on. Later on, it is revealed that Dr. Halsey actually visited John before his parents' death, before the whole kidnapping and all that, as we kind of all knew, where they do the infamous coin toss, where John, by luck, gets it right, obviously, showing the most random luck that he has, tried and true, as was shown in the games and all other forms of media. Anyway, moving on. Back on Reach, it is shown where we get our first real glimpse look at a dead elite with all of his armor removed, as Dr. Keyes is doing tests on it. And I gotta say, it looks gruesomely detailed. I'm really loving this. I hope we see more stuff like this, because this is really cool. Anyway, moving on. It seems Kai is a big fan of the Needler. A big fan, calling it her favorite Covenant weapon. Kind of talking details about it, to the dismay of Dr. Keyes, such as the super combine that just leaves blood everywhere when they explode, things like that. So, hey, I like the Needler too, so I'm kind of in her camp. Anyway, moving on. Back on Manchukuo, it is revealed that Soren's ship is being looted by various people on the planet. And Soren wants to get his ship back, and Ha says, my aunt, she has money, essentially has all the money. She, if they can get to the money, they can essentially restart the rebellion again, like Hall wants to. Anyway, moving on. And then, once they try to go find her aunt, all hell breaks loose, where various members, various civilians, attack them, because of Soren, being an ex-Spartan and all that, still in Spartan armor, pulls out his gun, but Hall quickly defuses the situation, luckily, and nobody gets hurt for their sake. So, anyway, moving on. And back in the lab, Keyes questions, why does Dr. Halsey prefer the Spartans over her, basically? So, obviously, further exploring, the kind of disconnect between Halsey and Keyes, obviously, her daughter. So, obviously exploring that. So, anyway, and also, Silver Team kind of gives some, I guess, memories of what they can remember, such as pets from their childhood, but nothing really much else to go on from there. Anyway, moving on. Back on Uranus 2, John questions Dr. Halsey about why he saw her in those visions, and Dr. Halsey says she warned him about how these memories could be altered, altering his memory, I guess, if you will speak, by these visions. And so, kind of a deflect, and also she tells him that, you're in grief. I cared about you back then, and I still do now. And that was the end of this scene right here. Moving on. Back on Manchukuo, Soren asks somebody how to get his ship back and how much does he have to pay to get it back, and civilian essentially said that it's too late, and that if you want it, the fastest way to get off Manchukuo is there a troop ship that takes off by at a certain time, and Soren says, I'm gonna need two helmets and that motorcycle too, and kind of motivate him to give it to him by showing him his pistol. I believe it's a revolver, I think. Some kind of pistol, I don't know. Anyway, moving on. And as Ha is talking to her aunt, it is revealed that what her father's mission wasn't exactly all it seems, and that all the money that she had was essentially used for the rebellion, and once that ran out, it was up. It was pretty much up. The gig was up. So anyway, moving on. And it is also revealed that the local force hired an assassin to take Ha out, but instead, as her aunt tries to defend her, she gets killed in the process. Her aunt gets killed in the process, and unfortunately for Ha, Soren steps in at the last minute, forces the assassin to flee. And they are also forced to flee while Ha, is trying to mourn the death of Ram. That was the end of that scene. So anyway, moving on. Back on Arrakis, Chief tells them that he remembers exactly where the artifact is. He knows that it exists on the planet and that he's seen it as a kid. Obviously, going back to the true purpose of why they're there. So, anyway, nothing really too much else to go on from there. Now, back to Reach. It is revealed where through analyzing the language of the Sankili, plus the imagery from where on Magical where she found the artifact, humanity has learned that the two artifacts are connected to a weapon called Sacred Icon that the Covenant call Halo. So obviously, humanity finally knows that Halo exists, and that. So obviously, next episode it's probably going to be where the OSD and SC know, and they kind of have to beat the Covenant to Halo at some point. Anyway, final shot coming up, which is where the second artifact is shown. Exactly as Chief described, and, well, he was right from the beginning. He definitely knew it this whole time. So, I personally think this episode was I guess, filler, to be honest, because I didn't feel there wasn't really many really big impacts, although I did like the character development of Kai. And it seems that she's going to be developing some kind of friendship with Dr. Miranda Keyes. So if I were to give this episode, I'd say it was probably middle of the road. And it seems like, based on previews, it seems that the next episode is where things are going to pick up again. It seems going to be around that big battle against Covenant. We've seen some trailers. Also, why the heck were there no Covenant at all, with the exception of that dead elite? That was kind of a pet peeve, really. So, if I were to give this episode on a 1 to 10 scale, I would give it a 6. Not great, not great, but it's not bad. I mean, hey, that's better than 0, right? So, I'd say it was definitely the weakest in the series so far. And wow, we're already over halfway there. That's crazy. Time flies, So, anyway, that's kind of it for this video. So, please hit that like button. Comment down below. You can consider subscribing to the channel as we go over each episode of the series plus other Halo related gaming topics, and I will see you guys in the next video. Later.